Welcome to Electronics Specify Insights, the podcast for electronics engineers. I'm your host, Paige Hookway. In today's episode, I'm joined by Connor Doherty, Director of Industrial Automation at DigiKey. Connor brings a unique perspective to the conversation. He started out as a DigiKey customer himself before joining the company, giving him a ground-level understanding of what engineers and procurement professionals actually need, not just what they say they need. We cover a lot of ground today, from the real state of Industry 4.0 adoption on the factory floor to the lingering supply chain headaches still affecting industrial buyers, and how DigiKey is repositioning itself as a strategic partner rather than simply a component supplier. With AI, edge computing and robotics converging at pace, Connor also shares his take on the single biggest shift reshaping the sector right now, and what engineers should be doing today to stay ahead of where automation is heading in the next 3 to 5 years. I hope you enjoy this episode. Let's get started. Hello everyone and welcome back to Electronics Specify Insights. Today I'm pleased to be joined by Connor Doherty, who is the Director of Industrial Automation at DigiKey. So thanks very much for joining us, Connor. How are you?
Thank you for having me, Paige. I'm doing well, just coming off an exciting week at Automate in Chicago in the US. It's been a great week of energy all around industrial automation.
Fantastic. Well, hopefully you can share some insights that you learned that week with us later. But to start with, why don't you just give a brief introduction of yourself and your background?
You bet. So my name is Connor Doherty, as you said, Director of Industrial Automation at DigiKey. So my team is focused on serving the suppliers and the products that they deliver to the market through our e-commerce channel as a big megaphone to the online engineering community to help them find the parts that they need. So we focus on bringing in all the new technologies that the manufacturers that we partner with launch, making sure they're merchandised correctly online so engineers can find them, all the material that they need to make their decision. But my background specifically, I grew up in the town that DigiKey is located in, Thief River Falls, Minnesota. I spent some time away, about 10 years out in California doing semiconductor sales, partnering with DigiKey, as a manufacturer, working with the customer, but using different distributor partners to help find the products that they need. And then eventually now finding my way back home to Minnesota and working at DigiKey, now on the industrial automation team. I have an electrical engineering background, so it's been really fun to try and figure out all these different building blocks that exist in the market and how engineers are finding value in those and the challenges that they're solving.
Excellent. I'm interested to hear, but before we deep dive into sort of the main topic, as you say, you've gone from being a customer of DigiKey yourself to now leading their industrial automation division. So how has that journey really shaped your approach to understanding what engineers and buyers actually need?
It's a great question. Yeah, I've gotten to see both lenses as a customer and one of the suppliers that DigiKey partners with. I would say I maybe took for granted the value of the channel and distribution and how they play, especially in the broad market. When I was talking with customers as a sales representative myself, we'd be pitching them on new products, and I took for granted again the value of getting availability on demand. I might be leaving a meeting and someone saying, "Hey, where can I buy this? I'd like to go play with it." If I were to talk to my internal teams, it might be a few weeks before we could send something out, or they might need a minimum order of 100 units. So what I would do is always have a tab pulled up with DigiKey's website and say, "Hey, it looks like it's available for sale right now. You could get 2 pieces on your desk tomorrow." So we would often bring the distribution partners like DigiKey up in conversations like that. As a consumer and a customer of DigiKey, I found value in having a one-stop shop just to see what exists. Very similar to maybe my consumer behaviors in my personal life, where I go to just a handful of websites and see what's for sale on there. Same thing as an engineering community going to DigiKey and trying to figure out, well, is there a type of product that fits this need that I have, and filtering all the way down and seeing what options exist. So it's been cool to see both of those sides of it and now be in the middle.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks for sharing that with us.
hmm
Okay, industrial automation. I think we all know it's evolving quite rapidly, what with AI and edge computing and robotics all converging. But what do you see as the single most transformative trend hitting the sector right now?
It's a great question. And I would be remiss not to say AI, just because I think it's warranted for the wave of activity that's happening. we've been on this journey in the past is looking at, how do we make data, how do we generate more data and make it more available for decision making? That hasn't changed and has only since accelerated in the past 5, 10 years as we look at, more sensors, more bandwidth on the networking side to route that data to either edge locations or to a centralized location. Now, the big question is, what do you do with all that data? I think we've kind of put all of our minds together as much as we can and continue to iterate on it. But AI, I think, takes us up to another level of how we can process that, make decisions on it, and then really kind of further what we've been trying to do all along of make smarter factories and processes all around us. So I would answer that with saying AI is one of the most transformative. I think we're still in a very early stage of that as we develop the right AI tools and layers that need to be built on this. But all the foundation's already been laid, and it continues to be laid with all the hardware around it that's going to be sending the data up to these systems.
And you mentioned smart factories. I mean, there's a lot of talk about smart factories and Industry 4.0, but how far along are most manufacturers actually in that journey? And where are the biggest gaps that you see between the vision and the reality?
It's a good question, and I think it certainly varies. I think we're still in the very early stages of it for a handful of different reasons. I think if you were doing a greenfield project and you've got a brand new factory, we can see a lot of opportunities for investment, and it's a sandbox for someone to play with. Say, great, I'm going to get all here's how I'm going to put my sensors, my industrial networking system, my control layers. I think the problem is not everyone has a ton of greenfield projects. Quite a few are still, retrofitting or trying to modernize some existing factories that have been up and running without hiccups for the last 10, 15 years. So how do you take all the technology available and kind of try to modernize that as much as possible? So I would say for the smart factory industrial 4.0 discussion that we're still in the very early phases of that, mostly as there's still quite a bit of these brownfield projects of bringing those up to even a current standard as opposed to trying to get it to this very futuristic state. But I have been very fortunate to visit some factories and some tours, getting to see, what this potential could look like. It is really cool to see those that have adopted it and have kind of gotten it off paper. I mean, the value is certainly there, but it's a bigger investment and it needs to be at the right timing. If you got a factory that doesn't have capacity output or quality issues, it doesn't quite make sense to go start a brand new warehouse.
Yeah, good point. And I think one of the other pain points that I want to talk about is obviously procurement right now. What with all the supply chain disruptions that we've seen over the past couple of years. I mean, what are some of the lingering challenges that your customers are still navigating today?
Yeah, it's a great question too because I think it's a central role that we play in terms of availability and quality of product. Especially we're entering and have been in now an upcycle in the industry for I'd say the past almost year now. Not to the point where I don't think, supply is running extremely thin that you're trying to find alternative solutions that fit form and function to meet demand. But I do think, the availability of supply is paramount, especially with the data center boom. We talked about AI, but more on like the infrastructure side of AI with the data centers, we see a lot of lead times maybe starting to extend a little bit as capacity becomes a little thin. And then the question from a consumer or I'm sorry, the engineer or a customer is saying, "Hey, am I going to have enough to meet my demand? Do I need to look at an alternative source? How does availability of that look? Do I need to place orders in advance?" And of course, the distributor, what we're trying to make sure we don't do is get into one of the bullwhip effects of everyone just stacking orders on top of each other. So I wouldn't say, we're there yet, but the importance of planning for your supply, placing lower orders on time, managing accurate lead times, and then making sure you've got a robust solution in case there's any hiccups in the supply chain, including all the the geopolitical challenges with tariffs and other country of origin challenges that continue to remain.
I think the thing that I've seen, and I've known DigiKey for quite a while, and you guys have traditionally always been seen as a components distributor, but your role has been evolving. You know, going from a component distributor to more of a supporting role. So, how is DigiKey positioning itself as more of a partner for your customers rather than just the supplier?
Yeah, it's fun. We actually this past week, there's been some really fun conversations at Automate where someone says, "I didn't think you'd be at this show. I didn't know you deal with this type of space." So the business unit that I lead, has been around maybe for about 8 years or so formally. In that time, what had happened, a customer survey went out to DigiKey customers saying, "Hey, what do you think we're best known for in your head?" and one of the highest results was industrial automation, which kind of surprised us because our bread and butter had always been component level semiconductors and passives that are more board mount. But we had found is, there is this growing demand of customers that were still buying from us, but for products that fit the industrial automation market. These products are more at the end equipment level, not board level. So solutions, modules, stuff of that sort. So DigiKey carved out this business unit and said, "Hey, there's this very large pool of customers that would like our model. Now we just need to do what we've already been doing and do more of it." So since then, we've been adding more products, adding more suppliers, adding more technical resources and content to help service that to the degree that it needs to be. So to answer the question much more directly, we've been focused on adding everything that has already we found work for a design engineer at the board level, and now looking towards the design engineer at the industrial automation level that's more solution oriented.
I'm interested, given you're fresh off the back of going to automate, which geographies or verticals within industrial automation are you most excited about right now, and why, I guess?
Yeah, it's hard not to leave that show excited about a plethora of things. I think every other booth had some sort of robotics involved, whether it was a robotic arm like a cobot, some robotic cell. There's a lot of autonomous robots. There was some humanoids, all sorts of stuff. So all of those I think are very cool from like a very sci-fi perspective that are brought now to real life and are all around us. So I do think the robotics pieces of this are very fascinating. It was also hard not to notice everything required to make all of that work, all the sensors, the safety equipment, the connectivity, the industrial networking. So unfortunately, it's kind of this cop out answer of looking at this whole ecosystem that needs to rely on each other for the whole thing to work. I saw some really fun demos, especially with safety, where I think depending on whatever laws exist in whatever region you're at, the importance that safety plays and as both as a requirement, but also as a company you want to have desired in your spaces. So that way you keep your employees safe, that we're very interactive. So I might be an example of a, conveyor belt running, you put your hand in, you trip a light curtain and everything stops, a light's alert, and you have to, push a bunch of buttons to get everything up and running again, which I think is awesome. I can't imagine, we had that level of safety measures 100 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I think going to an industrial automation show is definitely one of my favorites. You just bump into so many robots. No matter what aisle you walk down, there's always one wandering around.
100%. And then I started thinking of how we could use more robots at DigiKey or use them in my own home life. So I'm excited to see how robots, take a stronger role in our future.
Well, speaking of the future, I'm interested to hear your opinion on, say 3 to 5 years ahead. What does the industrial automation landscape look like for you? What should engineers be doing today to prepare for it?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great question, and much of which I think, however I answer, it's probably going to be something wildly different for how crazy things are changing at such a rapid pace right now. If I were to imagine it, though, I do picture increased amount of sensors than what we see today, collecting more data, vibration data, environmental, temperature, proximity, light, as much data that can be collected. So you're going to have a lot more nodes out there, which require a lot more connectivity. And then you need to plan the industrial networking backbone to route all the bandwidth of that data. But then you'll also need to be making decisions of, well, where do I want my, edge compute nodes versus my centralized compute nodes? Maybe you have your camera systems and your robot and safety systems running more off an edge compute that then routes back to your central PLC or control layers. So the answer, what I'd say in 3 to 5 years, is more. uh, It's kind of like an oxymoron, complex but simplified once they it can all get plugged in, but more data and connectivity around your manufacturing or warehouse systems. When I would hope 3 to 5 years, we'd see a more dominant usage of AI in those applications that are helping you either manage a digital twin or run simulations or give you predictive maintenance schedules. I don't want to use the word fantasize about that now because we're starting to see it, but I think we'll see it a lot more dominantly in the next, definitely by 5 years.
Yeah, definitely. Some great insight there. So I guess if you had to sum it up for us then, Connor, in a few sentences, why should customers come to DigiKey for their industrial automation solutions?
It's a great question. One I'm very excited to answer is, we have such a wide range of products across different technologies, applications, use cases, and suppliers in case you have a preference in any of those areas. We ship globally in a matter of days, so you can get on your shelf immediately. most importantly, we want to be the biggest NPI partner for our manufacturers. So the moment they're launching a new product, we want it on the shelf. We want you and the customer base to have as much information as you can, whether it's an image, data sheet, CAD model that you want to put in simulation. So that way you know exactly what you're getting and you can get it on your desk the next day. So when it comes to any challenge, which is going to be continuous that you might have, and you're trying to figure out how to solve it, looking to DigiKey to figure out what exists to help you solve your problems.
Fantastic. And I guess the best place they could do that is head over to the DigiKey website and all the information's on there. So
That's right. We read all the feedback that comes on the website. If there's anything that's missing and you're looking for, please submit it. But otherwise, we hope to give you guys the best experience that you can and continue to use us as a source for your components.
fantastic. So before we wrap up, is there anything else that you wanted to add?
No, I just appreciate the industrial automation community for being so close knit and welcoming and really advancing together across this fun front that we're all on right now. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, definitely. It's an excellent space to be working in. And thank you very much for sharing your insights with us. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you for having me, Paige. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this latest episode of Electronic Specifier Insights. Don't forget to subscribe to the series to keep up to date with our newest guests, and do share with fellow colleagues, friends and family who may be interested in the latest news from the electronics industry.